Hello, and welcome to the webinar. We will let a few more people join us, and then we'll get started in about a minute. In the meantime, I'll just let you know we are recording this presentation. If you have to drop off for whatever reason, we will send a link back out along with the presentation. So hopefully you won't miss too much there. Feel free to add into the chat your name and your business. Let us know where you're coming from. And you can use that chat throughout today to ask questions. We will have a Q&A at the end, but if we feel like your question is urgent, we'll get to it at an appropriate time. So again, thanks for coming. We're going to give it about one more minute, see if anyone else joins us this morning. Good to see you. Hope everyone is staying warm. And as another reminder, please turn your mute button on unless you have a question, and you can use the raise hand feature or raise your hand, and hopefully I'll see that. All right. As I mentioned, for just joining us, feel free to add into the chat your name and your business. Ian, Arvada Rentals is, setting a good example there. So welcome. All right, we will go ahead and get started with the introductions. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
And again, we decided to do a meeting style rather than a Zoom after our first webinar in this series because we love the interaction with the attendees. We want to give you an opportunity to speak up and ask questions. And it helps us as we're presenting rather than just staring at our panelists being able to see our attendees. So the cooperation that we're asking there, again, is if you can remain on mute when you're not speaking, so that our panelists can have the floor. Again, if you have to drop off, we will be recording this webinar, so we will send that back out. And again, if you're just joining us, feel free to add into the chat your name and your business, and so we can say hello to you. Hi, Rita, good to see you. Okay, let's get going. This is the final presentation in our fall marketing webinar series. We've had some really great presentations before this. If you missed out, all of our recordings are on our YouTube page. I can send out, I'll put all of these onto one blog post, so they're all available in one place afterwards. If you have questions about any of our presenters throughout this webinar series, please reach out to me. My name is Ryan Hecht. I'm the marketing director at the Arvada Chamber. Email's pretty simple, ryan@arvadachamber.org. So let's get to introducing our amazing panel here. If you were at the Arvada Business Summit, you saw two of these panelists present or host a session last week. So you're really in amazing company here in terms of marketing minds here in Arvada. I'll start with Marcus Turner. He's the Director of Communications and Audience Services at the Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. Marcus oversees marketing, sales, public relations, and house management for all divisions of the multidisciplinary arts organization. Prior to his work at the Arvada Center, he worked with SCFD, Northwestern University, and the University of Denver in a variety of marketing, fundraising, and administrative positions. That's Marcus. I'll move on to Janelle. Janelle Herrera is the VP of Marketing and Business Development at OnTap Credit Union. She has over 20 years of experience in traditional, digital, social, omnichannel, and e-commerce marketing experience. She creates marketing strategies that leverage data and digital expertise, ensuring personalized and impactful messages are communicated to members based on their needs. Before OnTap, Janelle led advertising and shopper marketing for a range of Fortune 500 clients. You might know a few of these: Pampers, Kellogg's, Duracell, IHOP, Dasani. When she isn't working, breweries are where she plays. She's in a great position. She even had her wedding at a brewery. So thanks for being here, Janelle. And last but not least, so excited to have Lindsay Hahnemann, who is a brand new position, co-owner of Blendworks Digital, a name you might know here in Arvada in the marketing space. Lindsay has always had a passion of helping small businesses thrive through strategic marketing efforts. Before becoming co-owner of Blendworks Digital Marketing in September 2022, like I said, that just happened, Lindsay was the marketing director for Piper Electric Company. There, she adapted Piper's marketing strategy while increasing brand exposure, a brand refresh implementation with a new modern logo and website, which we will get to. It's very exciting. And she also crafted a strategic digital ad campaign to gain more exposure to Piper's plant and facilities department. When she is not working, she enjoys spending time outdoors with her husband, her 18-month-old son, and her golden doodle. Lindsay, what's your golden doodle's name?
Her name is Millie. She's
Millie.
A cat, yeah.
Excellent. Well, we are big fans of beer and dogs on this webinar. Yes. We are all covered. Well, thanks to all of our panelists. We will get to everyone here in just a second, just to kind of lay the foundation and groundwork of why we're here. We're talking about branding. We're talking about brands. So what is branding? What is a brand? We've actually talked about this in one of our previous webinars, but just as a reminder, some branding basics. So we have this quote here: a brand is a person's perception of a product, service, experience, or organization. I also really like this definition. A brand is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that taken together account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. So I bring this up because traditionally we think of a brand, we think of Nike and the swoosh. We think of Apple and the Apple logo. We might think of the logo, but it's a lot deeper than that, right? A brand is a living, breathing thing that represents your business or organization. So let's keep that in mind as we move through this presentation. As I just said, a brand is not just a logo. It's not just a tagline. It's not just your product or service. As I just mentioned, it's the personality of your business. It represents your purpose, your vision, your mission, your values, strategic objectives. You have all of those probably out on your website. It's public. It's the ethos of your business, and your brand should represent that. Your brand is also your competitive advantage, and it's a visual and verbal identity. It's all of these things. So you're not just changing colors. You're not just changing a design if you're looking at rebranding. The last thing I'll get to on kind of the foundation, and Janelle really put this together, so I can't take credit for it. So if you're looking at consideration for a new rebrand, here's some things you might think about. First, your logo isn't flexible for the digital format, or it's tough to read. I was actually behind a truck yesterday, and on the back of it, there was a website. And first of all, the font was so busy, I could barely read the website. And two, I had no idea what the company was. It was just a name.com. I had no idea what they were selling. So, you know, it was a huge miss and a huge opportunity. I was right behind the truck. I was ready to learn more. Other reasons for a rebrand, it looks like the same as all your competitors. You really need to be focused on your competition, know what your competitors' brands look and feel like, and if you are setting yourself apart and have that differentiator from your competitors. Your brand no longer fits the growth strategy. of your evolving business or organization. I think Janelle's really going to touch on that in a little bit. And your brand doesn't match the values of your organization. And Marcus has some things to say about that. Janelle, do you want to touch on the Beachbody example here?
Yeah, so if you just talk about values, I think 20 years ago when Beachbody came to fruition, it was actually considered cool and acceptable to have a perfect beach body, and that's kind of what their brand was built on. It feels weird now because it's such a no-no and body shaming is a bad thing. But 20 years ago, it was completely fine. So fast forward today, they are beginning to rebrand who they are because they realize that their values as a company was always about health and wellness. And that Beachbody image is not about health and wellness. So it no longer fits their values. So that's just one example of why it makes sense for them to change their brand.
Excellent. Thanks, Janelle. As we move through some of these examples from our panelists, you will notice that the logos and the colors and the feel of the rebrands of these organizations and businesses have changed. But do keep in mind that it's possible to do a rebranding and keep a lot of the same color schemes, a lot of the fonts, and the look and feel of your brand could stay the same. But it's what you're saying, it's how you're presenting that could be a part of a rebrand strategy as well. So without further ado, and to really one of my favorite examples of a rebranding, and you've all seen it if you've driven up Wadsworth, if you have a mailbox, you've seen this rebranding from the Arvada Center. So Marcus, I'll let you take it away and talk through the rebranding strategy that you had there.
Thanks, Ryan. So great to be here and talk about some rebranding on a snowy morning. So what you see here on this slide is the old logo that the Arvada Center worked with on the left side, and then the new version of the logo that was developed through a rebrand process on the right. And I just kind of want to talk through how we came to this and the reasoning behind it, because as Ryan and Janelle both were just saying, a rebrand is not something that's approached lightly. It's not something that should be just saying, oh, you know what would be fun? You know what would be cool if we just rebranded, just for the sake of rebranding. There has to be some really informed strategy, informed ideas behind why we want to undertake this process of a rebrand. So Ryan, can you go to the next one? So I just want to give a little history of how this all came about for the Arvada Center. And this happened in 2018 is when the process started. And it's actually when I started working at the Arvada Center as well. The advice you get when you start a new job, and it's like, hey, don't shake everything up on your first day. I was like, we're just going to change the whole brand on, my first 3 months in the job. I don't recommend that. It was just part of it was part of what we saw was really necessary for the Arvada Center at the time. And really, it was this examination of, is this going to be a rebrand or a refresh? And there's subtle shades of difference in this notion of completely rebranding or refreshing. Janelle's going to get into this concept later of changing things completely over to newness being the theme. A refresh can retain some existing elements, retains what you feel needs to be retained, and then takes that and moves it up to the next level, or shifts direction, or more aligns with the values, or based on what you're doing. For us as a nonprofit and an arts organization, aligns with what we're doing programmatically and who we want to serve. So for those who don't know, the Arvada Center split from the city of Arvada. It used to be a city department in 2016. And after that change, there was not really an examination of what the brand or what the voice of the center of the organization was going to be as an independent nonprofit. So the opportunity was there for us to examine it and to take a look and say, we're this nonprofit now. We have this autonomy. We have we went through all these studies and processes to be this independent nonprofit. What does this look like for us? And everything was on the table. And when I say everything, I mean everything. And not everything got changed, but everything was kind of thrown into the mix of how can we consider this, including the name of your organization, the building, the location, all of that stuff. And granted, those conversations were pretty short, because what we found is that our equity and our reputation as a brand, as an organization, lives in those two words, Arvada Center. So if when we were on the slide previously, you saw that the previous logo used Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities for its entire title. doing some research and the stuff that we did found that our brand equity lives in just those two words, Arvada Center. And we didn't need to use the full title at all times. We could use those two words and still get the recognition and the brand awareness that we were really looking for. Everything, like I said, was on the table, but also was taking a look, like, as a nonprofit and as an organization, what our mission statement was going to be, where we want to be, our vision statement, and the core values that will inform what we do moving forward. And this was really important part of the process, but we had to have buy-in from really important groups of stakeholders, including our board of directors, obviously our senior leadership, and then just staff and volunteers and patrons and people who spend their money and their time at the organization. We didn't obviously take every suggestion that we got. That would be, there's this whole concept of like death by committee, but we took a lot of suggestions, or we took a lot of feedback in to say, what makes the Arvada Center different from other experiences you have at other arts organizations, key differentiators, things like that. What are your favorite things about the Arvada Center? What's been your most memorable moment about the Arvada Center? And that process, 4 or 5 month process, then led in to the official rebrand. So can we get the next one? This is a page from the Arvada Center brand guide. And the pink text here is the new mission that came out of this whole process. There's differing philosophies about writing mission statements for nonprofits and organizations and things like that. But we really felt like, because we're being multidisciplinary, we do all of these different things. We're not focused on just a single art form or a single program, that we needed to have something that was all encompassing. And also you'll see that this page includes alternate sentence structures, for different adaptations of even the mission statement. So brand flexibility was something that really came out of this process, and really important for us. After the brand, the mission, the values, everything is created and approved, and everyone's kind of like, yes, we're happy, we're going to go with this. Then what? How do you apply that to the practical, tactical, everyday things that you're doing as a marketing person or as a business owner? And the next slide, we're looking at some milestones that, hindsight is always 20/20. Obviously, but when you look back at the process, you can kind of see, oh, I wish we'd have done this, or these were the really things that stood out. I mentioned before the key differentiators, and I can just tell a funny little anecdote. We did this survey to like all of our patrons. It's 75,000 people that we were just asking, fill out this brief brand survey, give us your feedback. Like, what do you like best? What do you think is different about the Arvada Center? And I was very high-minded, and I was like, oh, people are going to say things like, I'm so moved when I come to the Arvada Center. I feel such deep emotions. The art just moves me in such a different way than anyone else. And the number one key differentiator that people liked out of those survey results was parking, and the amount of parking that we have at the Arvada Center. And what that tells us as marketing people is like, that is a key differentiator for, again, very practical usage, or very practical ways of working with us as an organization, or interacting with us as an organization. So that doesn't necessarily play into how the brand itself develops, but knowing where people stand and what they really appreciate about an organization compared to other organizations in the key differentiator side is really important. I already mentioned kind of death by committee and stakeholder feedback, but I also want to talk about this stuff on the other 2 pages from our brand book over here, voice and tone and brand personality. It was really key for us, again, being multidisciplinary, that we find a way to be concise and be clear in how we speak about our programs, whether it's a concert with Melissa Etheridge, or whether it's a tap dance class, or whether it's a musical theater production. The content of what we say will be different, but the personality with which we say that, and the voice and tone of how we say that, is going to be consistent with the guidelines of this brand. Warm and welcoming, simple and clear, playful and engaging. We fully understand that we're not heart surgeons or rocket scientists at the Arvada Center. And so we want to kind of lean into this idea that we're playful, and that we are engaging, and that there's something engaging and warm about the arts experience. So, and the most important elements that came out of this whole process: mission, vision, and values, and voice and tone, and then the visuals, which we'll get to in a minute. But my favorite part of this brand book that I use consistently whenever we're talking about it is the kind of the side that says professional but not stuffy, multifaceted but not scattered, playful but not juvenile, innovative but not exclusive. Putting some guardrails around your brand like that to say, we are this but not this, saying that you have some definition surrounding that is really helpful for, again, practical application and through this process. Go to the next one. So this is an example, again, from the brand book of how we apply our visuals, and the visuals have to be informed by the mission, the voice, and the tone. We went with this pink and purple palette that's kind of a far swing from what we were doing before, because we wanted to make it a true rebrand and not just take and refresh what we were doing with kind of a blue and black palette of what it was before. We wanted to increase the vibrancy, increase the warmth, and you can see kind of the ideas here about layering and gradients, and those are all elements that landed in the brand that support the mission and vision and values and the tone and the personality that we're trying to get across. So whenever we design anything, whenever we look at something from the ground up, now we have this scaffolding built. So we're not having to start from square one. We say, we know exactly who we are and how we want to say what we want to say and what we want to look like. So here's how we want to present this. There's more serious application. Obviously, if we're doing a play that's or a show that's got more serious tones to it, we can't be whimsical necessarily with that. So again, flexibility is really, really key for that. So long story short, I'm really not short, obviously. I love the sound of my own voice, so I will talk for a long, long time if given the opportunity. But the rebrand process was informative, primarily just to say, we know who we are, but we don't know how to say it. And the rebrand process helped put those words in our mouths in a way that was consistent across the entire organization. And I would say this is 4 years later since we've done this rebrand. I would say that just now the brand is starting to get its legs under it a little bit more. And it takes time for that to develop, especially with with an organization that has history or a long longevity in the community. It can be a longer process. I know this because I did some very, very casual brand research the other day where I Googled Arvada Center and images, and the old logo didn't show up anywhere. And that was I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that, because that means that the brand is actually making the penetration into the market that we wanted it to make, and it's being successfully applied in some ways. Obviously, it's, as Ryan said, evolving and a breathing thing that has to be examined. And we're coming up on the 5-year mark of when we will have to kind of take a look at the successful applications and what we need to do to keep it alive. So I welcome any questions at the end or anything, but I think it's turn back over to Ryan to then go to Janelle.
I love what you said. We know who we are. We don't know how to say it. I don't know who else in this room is feeling that right now, especially as you expand your offerings. If you're a growing company, internally, all of those offerings, what your business and organization is. But does your audience, do your customers know that? And putting it into a succinct message, and determining the tone and all of that, just great job and great example, Marcus. Thanks for bringing that up. So our next presenter, we're gonna have Janelle talk about the rebranding of OnTap Credit Union, which is an entirely different, monster and challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. As Marcus was saying, and we were talking earlier, you don't go into a change lightly, and, vision and mission really do feed into that. In our case, our vision and mission as a whole wasn't changing. That was still staying the same. However, our business growth strategy was changing. We had been initially a credit union only for Coors employees and their families for over 60 years. And then we'd opened up to the community. But we'd been opened up to the community for 3 or 4 years, and people still believed you had to be a Coors employee to join the credit union. In addition, we were looking to grow our business model to look beyond just, the Coors employees and be more inclusive of all beer industry businesses and employees, as well as the community. And unfortunately, in the Colorado market, Coors was considered a bad name with a lot of craft brewers. Whereas, but it was beloved by those in Golden and Arvada. So we kind of had a bit of a challenge ahead of us. And we looked at various different options. Ultimately, we did decide to go with a name change, and that's where we went with OnTap Credit Union. We got lucky because an employee actually came up with it and it tested really well. So we went with it. But I would say the full branding process, because I'll go into kind of our branch look and feel, our website, and to finally get the name changed on everything was realistically a 3-year process. So, just between, name changes and then the actual infrastructure and building and design. The other thing is, I think as we all know, most people really do not like change. They would rather not have change. So, if you are thinking about a name change, do not go into it lightly. Be prepared for what is going to come towards you when that name change happens. And I'll kind of talk about some of the things we did to prepare for it to really help our members in the community embrace the name change. And go on to the next slide. So as I was saying, it's, more than just a logo, it's an entire look, feel. Breweries are part of our heritage, and we just believe that banking shouldn't be stressful. And finances shouldn't be stressful, and they often are. So to the best of our ability, we really want to make banking with OnTap Credit Union feel like a welcoming, warm, maybe your local tap room, someone you would trust and talk to environment. And that's what we did. So even, the name tags of our tellers are actually tap handles. And we have each branch set up to highlight a local business in the community, featuring some of their merchandise as you walk in to show how we're part of the community. But we're still true to our heritage. We don't want to hide that we were ever Coors Credit Union. That's a big part of who we are. So those back panels show a lot of the history of Arvada and Golden and Coors and how we were started. So we really embraced that. We just created a wider net. You want to go to the next slide. So we have a deep, we knew there was a deep love for Coors, the Coors name, the Coors brand. So I think one of the most important things we did at the time is get an endorsement from Pete Coors to say, hey, we know Coors Credit Union has been with us for a really, really long time. They're continuing to be with us, but we endorse that they're changing their name to be more inclusive of everyone in Colorado. And I think for those who loved the Coors brand, and really that's what drove them to the credit union, that endorsement and that letter from him took us a long way. It was extremely helpful. We did a lot of communication in all forms, letters, flyers, print ads, signage at branches, going to each of our business partners and talking to them. We wanted to make sure it wasn't, blindsiding by anyone. So we tried to have as many conversations as possible before the name change and after to really reinforce that. And then everyone loves a little financial perk. So at the time of the actual name change, we did do a CD promotion to celebrate it so that everyone kind of won and got a little bit of positive affinity with the name change. So that change is hard, and we know it's hard. So we really wanted to make it as easy as possible. And we did those things I said to really combat. These were expected challenges that we knew were going to happen. The love of the Coors brand heritage. A lot of our loyal, longtime members, they still call us Coors Credit Union when they come in. And that's okay, because that's who we are and that's our heritage. And it's going to take a long time for everyone to change and call us OnTap. But we embrace that and we know that, and it's just going to take time, and that's okay. The other thing with a name change, and I think it's an unexpected cost that most people don't think about, if you've been spending any dollars in your market promoting your business, and then you suddenly change your name, you're going to have to rebuild that awareness of that name all over again. So just make sure you're factoring that in to your costs and expenses if you're going to that path. And then all businesses have their logos everywhere, but particularly in banking, it is endless. I mean, it has took us 18 months from when our name changed to get it updated in all our touch points. So, and I still come across it in some places every once in a while. So just know it's not easy. It's going to be, all of your, envelopes, letters, like there all those touch merchandise, giveaways, like there are just so many pieces that you may not realize your logo lives on. So just be prepared that, you know, what are you going to do with that? We ended up donating all of our stuff to a charity outside of the country. So that way it wouldn't be showing up here, but that's what we did with all of our other branded pieces. So keep that in mind. Is that all I have? Oh, one more thing, one more slide. So we talked about being inclusive, and I love this quote: you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. So we couldn't just say we were going to be inclusive of everyone in the beer industry. We really had to show that we were inclusive. So we already have a lot of branded debit and credit cards with, you know, Coors logo, Colorado Native, Blue Moon, those brands that are all part of Coors. We had a lot of those, but we really wanted to show that we're here to support you know, the community as well as the beer industry, which is one of our pillars. And so in doing that, we did partner with the Colorado Brewers Guild and then the Pink Boots Society, which supports women in the brewing industry. And we created debit and credit cards for them to show that give back to those charities anytime that they're used. But that was just one way to show that we are really embracing and being inclusive versus just saying we were going to do it and throw out a name change. So I think if you do have a growth strategy, you just really need to make sure you're going to back it. You can't just build it and expect people, you can't just say, oh, we're on tap now and it's going to happen. You have to go out there and make sure you're, you know, walking the talk. So, and that's it for On Tap. Feel free to ask questions later.
Thank you, Janelle. And as you mentioned, if you have questions for any of our panels, feel free to use the chat, and we can get to those at the Q&A portion at the end. I'm now going to turn it over to Lindsay to talk about the brand new Piper Electric Company rebrand.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So Piper Electric, they're very well known in the Arvada area. They're almost 40 years old this coming year. And so when I was working at Piper, I knew it was really important to refresh the whole look because the old logo was very dated. It dated the company. And so with that, we came up with a new logo, which you can see here on the right. And then on the left is our old logo. Next slide, please. So I really want to make sure that everyone here understands the difference between a rebrand and a refresh, because Piper Electric definitely went through a refresh and not a whole rebrand. So when you're rebranding like Arvada Center and On Tap Credit Union, you know, you're going through the whole new brand positioning, brand values, brand guidelines, mission and vision statement. All of that stayed the same for Piper Electric. We just really needed to have a new, fresh, modern look that didn't date us as an electrical company. And so with the refresh, we did what it says here with a new logo, font, color palette, brand slogan, which I'll get into here in a minute, and the whole writing style. Next slide. And sorry, I have a little cold, so I'm a little stuffy. But so our brand refresh entailed an updated logo, which you guys saw, and the brand slogan. So this was really crucial for Piper because even though we've been around for 40 years, we had a lot of misconception that either we were too small of a company, that we couldn't handle these like really big commercial projects, or vice versa, that they were too big of a company and couldn't handle the residential service calls. So in our slogan on our tagline on our logo, we really wanted to highlight those 4 pillars that they do: commercial, industrial, residential, and service. So just making sure that that's really well known for our customers was important to Piper. And that also entailed a new website, because the old website didn't highlight clearly any of those messages of the service types that Piper did. So the new website, it was really important for us to build the website as a customer would go down the journey of being a customer for Piper. So who we are, what we do, which clearly stated all of those services, going through the process of what it is to work with Piper Electric, and then showing what work we've done in all those realms. So like a portfolio. And then obviously we had to update employee uniforms, all of the vehicle wraps, and just an overall improved look. So unlike the Arvada Center and On Tap, which they did this years ago with their whole rebrand, Piper just did this year. So we're still very much in the thick of it. Because like all of the vehicle wraps aren't done because it takes time. It takes time to update everything, and it's costly. So whether you want to just get it done all at once, or if you want to break it up, like what Piper wants to do is a slow process to update everything. Next slide, please. So the whole logo design took about 2 months. And I must say it was a little overwhelming because we got about 30 or more initial logo versions, had to pare that down to 8, and then we had the final 2. And we wanted to incorporate the new design into the new website. So then the website launched this past September once we had the new logo. And like I was just saying, it is a very slow process to transition everything else with the new logo. So just be aware of that, because there's a lot of stuff like even marketing swag and updating all of your online social media profiles. There's a lot that goes into it. So the challenges that Piper had was, again, having that 30+ logo versions was overwhelming for a lot of us. But it also allowed us to take pieces from all of those versions and adapt it to where it is today. At Piper, we really had to get all of our leadership to agree on the logo, which there's probably about 8 of them in leadership, and everyone had a different opinion. So again, when going through all of this, you want to have one point person to make the final decision. Otherwise, it could take years for everyone to agree. So when I was at Piper, I was the point person. So I took everyone's comments, feedback, we adjusted. But overall, I had to like just pull the trigger and make the decision. Otherwise, again, it would took forever. And then another challenge also, as you saw in Piper's new logo, we have 4 colors, which when we were initially designing it, it was to highlight those 4 departments or 4 sectors that Piper really focuses on, the commercial, industrial, residential. But in hindsight, it's been a bit challenging to incorporate that into marketing swag because each color that you have is actually an additional cost. So a lot of our swag to save on costs is either just the black version of the logo or white version. And then same with uniforms, it can add extra costs the more colors that you have. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but we're getting through it. So just things to think about when you're looking to rebrand or refresh. And I think that's it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Thanks to all of our presenters for reviewing your rebrand or refresh. We do have some time for questions. If you have a question, feel free to use the chat or raise your hand and we can get to you and ask it off mute. I do want to come back to a theme that was brought up, I think, by everybody, but just to reiterate, what stakeholders do you need to go to get feedback for when putting together or considering a rebrand or a refresh, internally and externally? these can be stakeholders that you used, or maybe the lessons that you wish you had gone to. Lindsay, I know you just touched on it, so go ahead, Janelle.
I can chime in. I think, we knew our board of directors was important. We obviously, our members are part of us, the owners of the credit union. So they were surveyed as well. So their input was important. But I think the most important thing is to know who your decision maker is and know who your inputters are. So just because you're providing input and information doesn't mean you're the decision maker, and no one's ever going to agree. So knowing who the true decision maker is and defining that from the beginning, it could be one person, it could be two people, but making sure that you have that aligned is really important.
Yeah, and I will say at Piper, even before we started the logo design, I knew leadership had to get on board. So even before we started design, I sent a whole survey out asking them their feedback on our current logo or any kind of ideas that they would like to see. So I had that information going forward. But yeah, to Janelle's point, you have to have that decision maker. Otherwise you'll go in circles.
Yeah, ditto. We asked about everyone that we possibly could, patrons, staff, board of directors, volunteers, everyone for input, but we didn't tell them we were going to implement their input necessarily. So we just wanted people to give feedback. This is particularly with regard to like the brand research surveys that we did. When it came to the visuals, that was way more internal than anything else. That was we weren't asking patrons for their feedback on logos or anything, because that would be, again, a lot of feedback coming in and not necessarily going to be helpful feedback. The mission, vision, value stuff that happened before the visuals informed what logo designs were presented internally. And we did some reviews with obviously communication staff at the Arvada Center. There's a committee of the board that was involved, and then the full board ultimately had approval on it with our senior leadership. So we had this kind of tiered process, knowing that what we were presenting was stuff that already communication staff, marketing staff could apply in ways that were easier for us going into website design, going into collateral design, and all that stuff.
So I'll ask one more question, and if anyone else in the group here has something, please feel free to add it into the chat. We've talked a little bit about the risk associated with a rebrand or a refresh. What were some of the hidden costs? And Lindsay, you mentioned this a little bit with the swag and the color combination. What are some of the hidden costs that you maybe weren't planning for, costs or risks associated with your rebranding?
Oh, sorry. I can just quickly say something that also popped up. Piper, actually, so when I had the final logo version, Piper changed their name very slightly, where it was Piper Electric, used to be Piper Electric Co. Inc., but now they're an LLC, so it changed just Piper Electric Co. So I was literally days away from about to launch the website with our new logo, and they were like, oh, by the way, our name changed. So I had to go back to the designer, get all new logo files, and just take out that ink. So that was a little bit of a hidden cost because, the designer had to charge me for their time. So just knowing like things like that can definitely happen. Not that that was a huge cost, but it's still added on to the overall budget and time, took time to change everything.
Yeah, I'll add on to other things. In the day and age of social media, especially with a name change, no matter how much you communicate, everyone's going to have an opinion. And so I think preparing your leadership team and your board that you might see a lot of things and a lot of comments on social media, and you can't please everyone. And you're going to see the negative comments probably more loudly than you will the positive ones. So make sure you prepare everyone for that, because I think that can ruffle some feathers. People, like, again, people don't like change. So setting those expectations. And I think the other thing is, this is a different credit union example, but they were going in and changing their name, and they knew their target was really going to be females are their primary target. So having a softer look was their goal. And if that's your vision and your mission, and that's what you're building upon, you're not going to please everyone. So of course, when they launched their brand, there were members that were like, it's too feminine, I don't like it. But that is okay. You have to know what your vision and mission are and stick to it. Because if you start trying to appeal to everyone, then you're no longer sticking to what your goals are. And then to your point with our name change, if you do a name change, think about search. Think about people looking for your address, location. Are they looking for Coors? Are they looking for on tap? So we just had to do some things with search and kind of Google Maps and Google Analytics and things like that to make sure that people could find us. So I think that was one unexpected piece we really didn't think through.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we came across and are still coming across is, again, I keep going back and referencing the multidisciplinary nature of the Arvada Center. But what that really means is that we face the risk, and this is a challenge that we still face, is diluting the brand that we came up with and that we all settled on by having these kind of mini sub brands kind of existing. So like, we're the Arvada Center, but then there's Arvada Center Galleries, there's Arvada Center Theater, there's Arvada Center Education, and those individual departments and individual programs want their own look. They want to be distinguished. They want to be able to be separated out to say, I want to make sure people know that you have to have these conversations about, like, okay, we can figure out how to differentiate your program within the voice and personality that we're doing, but within this new brand structure that we've all agreed upon. This is something that, again, I should have mentioned this before too. I think it's me, but every organization I've ever worked at has gone through a rebrand while I've been there. And I think I just bring that, and I walk in and they go, what we should do is do a rebrand. And I'm like, great, here we go again. At Northwestern University, when I worked there too, it was the same problem. They went through a comprehensive rebrand while I was there. And you have all these individual schools and programs that, how do you maintain integrity of the overall brand while providing distinction and autonomy to any individual components of the organization? We've managed to find a balance, but sometimes it teeters, sometimes it doesn't, where education patrons recognize the classes at the center logo, or as Rita just put in the chat, ACES, our Arvada Center event space, is a new business that didn't exist when we rebranded. So it's a new component that we didn't have at the Arvada Center when the rebrand in 2019 happened. So flexibility has to be key in a brand. You want to have the guidelines, you want to have the guideposts in place to direct it, knowing that there has to be some wiggle room.
Marcus, I'll ask you a follow-up question. It came up in what Janelle was just talking about in terms of internal communication before you go launch. What did that look like at the Arvada Center to get everyone on the same page?
With the visuals?
Yep, when you were just about to go to launch with the rebrand.
Yeah, so we did a two-part process with this. So we did the comprehensive mission, vision, values rebrand first, took that to the board of directors saying this is phase one. After doing all the research that we did, all the surveys, we took that to our committee, to our staff, to our board of directors, and got approval on that, and then launched into the second phase of visual design and looking at how whatever we decided on in core values and everything informed the visuals, the palette and everything. And I mentioned this when we were meeting before preparing for this webinar, but interestingly, we had a firm help us with this rebrand process, and the two final concepts for brands, for logos, design, visuals that we came down to were very, very, very different. There's the one that you saw on my slide of the kind of thin font with the kind of starburst element with the kind of spindles coming off of it. The other one was the exact antithesis of that. It was big blocky letters, and if anyone's seen the branding for Meow Wolf, it kind of looked like that just a little bit. And this was before Meow Wolf was in the Denver market or anything, so dodging a bullet maybe without any brand confusion by going with the logo that we went with. But what we decided on was, we had initial, like Lindsay was saying, we had a huge spate of logo designs to choose from, and then internally with communication staff and then some senior leadership feedback, we narrowed that down into a couple, took that to the board and let them think that we would have been happy with either choice, and say, here's what we're thinking, and then there's the decision making right there.
Awesome. Any other questions for the group here? Otherwise, I think we'll give you 10 minutes back in your day. I want to thank again, Janelle, Marcus, and Lindsay for presenting. Your brands are awesome. That's why I invited you to present on here. And I want to invite everyone who attended. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or our presenters afterwards. They're great resources here in our community on marketing. I'm sure they would all welcome thoughts and questions afterwards. And if you have, if you missed some of the presentation, I will send out a recording as well. Again, I'm Ryan Hecht, I'm the Marketing Director of the Arvada Chamber. Thanks so much for coming to this webinar. And hope to see you soon, and stay warm out there. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.